Hello again. I'm back, and this time it didn't take me 2 months to get a new drawing done. Once again, I'm using the Inktense 36 set of pencils and experimenting with some quick and dirty drawings. Today's drawing, I have focused on using grayscale with a few twists. I have employed the charcoal gray for parts of the hair and clothing and the ink black for the remainder of the drawing. I start by sketching in a bit of the hair with the charcoal gray. Then onto the eyes using ink black. Parts of this drawing will be quite dark. You still want to start out with reasonably light layering. At the start, I just want to mark out some of the darker areas of the drawing, shaded regions, dark patches of hair, or wrinkles. I use a bit of blue in the eyes, and I also go with some blue around the eyes. This is a slight deviation from my previous two drawings where I really stuck with just ink black for the skin and only used color for the eyes. Now you may be wondering about the subject, which the title clearly gives away. My hope is that when I am finished, this will resemble Skorpa of the White Horse, a fictional character from the Last Kingdom, who is played by Jonas Malmsjo. If you don't know the Last Kingdom, it is a TV series produced by the BBC based on a series of books by Bernard Cornwell called The Saxon Stories. I find it to be a really interesting series, kind of like a toned down or tame Game of Thrones. Most of the acting is superb, as you would expect for a BBC production. It is on Netflix, at least here in Canada, and there are 2 complete seasons and a 3rd is in the making. I should mention that the first time I watched it, I turned it off about halfway through the first episode. Later I gave it another try, and I'm happy that I did. I think by the time you get into the 3rd show, you will really start to enjoy it. I chose to draw Skorpa mostly because of his intense face and the amazing makeup. With all of these Inktense drawings, it is all about layering. Keep layering until you get things as dark as you need them. If you make a mistake, no problem. Just try to blend it in or increase the contrast to accommodate the mistake. Alternatively, you could pull out the white and try to lighten things up, but I usually find it's unnecessary and it's easier just to blend in the mistakes. I'm now getting onto the facial hair. I use ink black for the darker parts and charcoal gray for the lighter sections. Beards and mustaches seem to be my nemesis when it comes to drawing. I usually leave them for last because I'm worried I'll screw them up, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if I do them last and make a mess of things, then it ends up being a lot of wasted effort on the rest of the drawing. I will slow things down a bit just for a minute to show what I'm doing with the pencils. If I want to put down an intense layer of ink black, then I apply my wet brush directly on the pencil lead. That is what I am attempting to do here as I color in parts of the beard and cheek. As the brush gets dry, you will need to add more water. If you add too much water, you will need to add more pigment. I've also noticed different types of brushes seem to absorb more or less pigment. If I ever quantitatively analyze this in detail, I will let you know the results of the analysis. If, however, I want to apply only a light layer, then I will water my brush and draw some pigment from the lead onto the wood of the pencil. I can then water that pigment down further and apply the diluted pigment and water to the paper. For instance, with the teeth, I just want to gray them out just a little bit. Clearly, he doesn't have pearly whites. If you accidentally get too much pigment, you can either quickly add water with your brush and try to spread the pigment around. Alternatively, you could try and blot up the ink with some paper towel. The ink does lift a little, but dark ink on white paper becomes a permanent stain fairly quickly. Back to full speed. I chose to do two tones, the charcoal gray and ink black, for the hair, mainly because the reference image has brown hair with blonde highlights. Anything that seems blonde or gray, I tended to go with the charcoal gray. If it was darker, I went with the ink black. Now I should point out, I really didn't spend the time I should on the hair. These are supposed to be quick drawings with the focus on the face, so I tried to make the hair just good enough that it doesn't really distract from the face. I'm not sure I actually succeeded in that. Unlike most of my drawings of late, this comes with a reference image that anyone can look up. So yes, it is not hard for you to look up Skorpa and realize how bad of a job I did drawing him. Feel free to roast me in the comments. Again, I've used the Lyra Rembrandt colored pencils to tidy up the eyes, bring some detail to the nose and mouth, and add in some facial hair. Now the other color I went with from the Inktense was the poppy red. This was the color in the dye around his teeth and mouth. I guess the idea behind this is a warrior would rub a staining berry on his teeth and lips to make them look more intimidating. For my drawing, this may have him looking more like a crazy clown or a zombie, but that wasn't my intention. I didn't really have time for critiques on this one. I struggled with the mouth and lips. This is the second drawing in a row where if it was done in color, it would be no problem. But because it is grayscale, it is hard to distinguish between gums, lips, and skin. As I mentioned before, I didn't give the hair enough attention. I also failed to capture the intensity of his smile. I believe this was because of the shading in the cheeks and a bit in the shape of the eyes. The drawing took about 6 hours, which is a nice time savings compared to the 15 hours required for my last colored pencil drawing. Finally, I would like to point out how little I have used these pencils. This is the third drawing in a row using the ink black and charcoal gray, and as you can see, I barely used 2 centimeters of each of those pencils, and they have been used in past drawings as well. Now, I do plan on at least one more drawing using Inktense pencils, but I want to get back to my pastels before that. So hopefully, within the next 2 weeks, I should be posting my full review of the Malmsjo 36 set of oil pastels. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe.